Hey, everybody, welcome to our virtual Bible study. We are glad you tuned in tonight. If you are following our current series on this video series, we're studying the book of Proverbs topically, and we're calling it Wisdom for Life. And you'll see that in the title description of the video, Wisdom for Life. And what we're doing is we're just taking a look at the book of Proverbs and we're just taking it a topic at a time. We discussed alcohol. We have talked about the family. We've talked about marriage and about parent-child relationships. And we've talked about the use of the tongue. In this lesson, lesson number 11, we are talking about divine wisdom for work, for labor. So we'll get to that in just a second. Hey, if you're tuning in tonight on our YouTube channel, first of all, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We would ask for you to do us a favor, though. If you've never subscribed to our video series, to this channel, the North Hamilton Church of Christ channel, do us a favor and go down below the video and hit the subscribe button. Now, this is a mutually beneficial thing that you're going to be doing. It's going to help you because you're never going to miss content when we put it on YouTube. That's a good thing. You don't want to miss our content. That includes sermons, live streams where we have live services or special events that are being live streamed, the classes that we pre-record. Just go there and subscribe and help you by not missing content, but then help us because the more subscribers we have, it boosts our visibility on YouTube, which is what we want. There's a lot that's not good on YouTube. There's some that's okay. It's just sort of neutral content. But we believe Bible truth is the best thing on YouTube. So please help us out by subscribing to our channel. Then you can also help us by giving us a thumbs up, which is just sort of a quick way for us to look at the video to see how many people were engaged in the video. You help us by doing that. Now, if you're on Facebook, the single most important thing you can do to help us on Facebook is to share the video on your timeline. There's a reason for that. We're a public page, right? We're not a page where you have to be invited to be our friends. We add you to a friends list, and it's sort of an exclusive club of just special people who get to do that. Instead, we're a public page, which means you have to like and follow us. You have to put the follow button and follow the North Hamilton Church of Christ. A lot of people can't see us until they see something maybe that you post of ours on Facebook. So if you'll take and hit that share button and share this video on Facebook, all of a sudden we become visible to every single person who's on your friends list. That's really super important because then they may follow our page and have access to these videos as well. So we're trying to get the truth to as many people as possible. This is great stuff. Proverbs is so practical. Who wouldn't benefit from the information in the book of Proverbs? Okay, so lesson number 11 in our series, which by the way means we're getting closer to the end of our series. But lesson number 11 is some wisdom from Solomon about work. Wisdom for life, about employer-employee relationships. And more specifically about how to be a good employer, how to be a good employee, and what does God say generically about work. So what we do in this video series is we try to follow the class notes. Okay, so in the class notes, we have open discussion, but before we do the open discussion, people take home notes and we have sort of a guided open discussion. We have notes we take home, we study, we look at some scriptures and we look at some questions about the scriptures and we jot down our notes and then we come back and we put our heads together and we talk about, what the Bible is saying, how it applies, and it's great. We don't get to do that here because of this format, so it's pre-recorded, right? I record it in advance. But we still follow the notes, right? So the questions that I'm reading are the ones that we'll be answering via open discussion in class. So here's question number 1 under this category of work. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on where we stand currently in our nation, right, in an American context, regarding attitudes toward employment, toward labor? Do you think there's more or less respect today between employers and employees? And then we'll spend some time in class explaining our answers. We'll talk about, and we always end up on a rabbit chase, not too far from where our original point is, but we always end up in some sort of a rabbit chase in a good way, because somebody will always bring out things that we hadn't thought of before. There was an interesting article back just a few years ago, I mean, like a year and a half ago, and it was in Forbes, and it was talking about employment in an American context. And they did a survey of executive leaders in America, and they found that one in five leaders, executive leaders, agreed with this statement: no one wants to work. And they agreed with that. Now, I would probably say if we refreshed that study and we were to survey executive leaders today in this particular year in which this is being published, because we're a few years from that, I would say it might even be higher. I mean, maybe 2 or 3 in 5, I would think, would say and agree with no one wants to work. Now, some of those leaders cited some evidences for that, some evidences for the belief that no one wants to work. And I've taken 2 of the things that they said were in their top 2, and then I've, with some other surveys and some other polls, put together a list of like maybe 4 evidences of the fact that we have a diminishing work ethic in American culture. Like people genuinely don't want to work. There are a lot of people that do. There are a lot of people that want to work and really do a good job at what they do. But there does seem to be a transition to this idea that people don't want to work like they used to. And even if you have somebody working, they're not quite the workers that they used to be. So here's some of those reasons. Now, they cited these 2 reasons. Number 1, the lack of response to job postings. Okay, so this was especially true. Well, it's true today. I mean, there's still some unemployment in America, and it's not the highest it's ever been, but it's high, right? So there's unemployment. So an employer will put a job posting out. They'll say, we are looking for someone. Now, there are some jobs, right, that require training and degrees, and there's some positions that can't be filled by just anybody. But there's a ton of jobs. I mean, millions and millions and millions and millions of jobs, 10 million plus jobs that can be filled by people who have no college degree. They just need somebody to come work. And what they're saying is they're putting these job postings out and nobody's responding to them. There's very little interest in the jobs anymore. Even though people are needing jobs, they're not responding to job postings. Now, the second thing they listed is poor quality candidates. So again, I understand there are things in life where if you're going to do certain things, you have to have certain specialized training for that, right? You wouldn't want to go into the doctor's office and a person comes in and says, I'll be your doctor today, and he has no training at all, no knowledge at all. And that's not to say that you could, just because you're certified doesn't mean you're a good doctor. I get that. But you wouldn't want somebody saying, listen, yesterday I was living on the streets and there was this job posting. So here I am today, making a bunch of money. I'll be your doctor today. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll be your doctor. I get it, right? There are underqualified people in some of those positions. We get that. But aside from that, there are just some jobs that train, and they're willing to train you to do a certain job within the company. And they're getting candidates who just have zero interest in being there. So there's poor quality candidates. There was a recent Gallup poll that suggested 86% of employees are actively disengaged at work. So along with that idea of poor quality candidates is this mindset that people don't want to be at work. They don't want to work. They don't want to do any work. They desire not to be there, but to be somewhere else. They just don't desire to be at work. I added 3 and 4 to this list. And these are from legit surveys and from what we know of, just practically looking around town. Number 3, people quit before they even start. So they might interview for a job. They might respond to a job posting, but then before they ever start the job, they're out. They don't give it a chance. They don't do anything. There's no interest. Once they've been told you've got the job, they're like, yeah. And I know that practically because, My wife is in a position where she helps train new employees coming into her company, and they'll have that all the time. People will start a training program and they'll just quit before they even start. And then number four, people are complaining that the job is not what they thought. Right? So they'll actually start the job, and very soon after they start the job, they'll say, "Yeah, this is not what I thought," and they'll just quit. And they remain in that sort of limbo of never having a job, always interviewing for jobs, maybe getting jobs, quitting before they start, or starting and then saying it's not what they thought. And we see the practical effects of that. We see it when, for example, you go in a restaurant and the wait times are astronomical because it's just understaffed. They don't have enough people working for them. People won't work. And so you maybe get on the phone and you need to call somebody at an insurance company, or you purchased something somewhere, and the wait times to talk to somebody are astronomical because there's nobody to fill those positions. Businesses are having to open late and close early, and open only at odd hours because of a worker shortage in the company, whatever it might be. And you especially see this with restaurants, retail businesses, where people are just open at strange hours because they don't have anybody to open the store, and they don't have anybody to close the store, and the restaurant can't open this early because nobody will show up, and they have to close early because nobody's going to work that late. There's just no workers. So what's happening? Why is this happening? Well, COVID had a lot to do with it, and it wasn't a virus that made people do that. The virus gave people the opportunity to become lazy, or maybe it just peeled back the layer of the onion, so to speak, and you kind of saw, and maybe we're still seeing the effect of how lazy really people are, and they got accustomed to not working. And I think a lot of people, we saw a reset in COVID, and not in a good way. We saw that. I think values are changing. I think that's a lot of it. There are people with less families today. They're just single and they don't want to be married, and because of that, they don't want anything and need much. And so, you can have a part-time job and work 10 hours a week and have a little bit of money for gas, and they seem fine with that because they're not raising families and they're not married. And I think that there's a direct link between a decrease in the people who value family, and they value more personal, selfish time. There's nothing wrong with not being married, but this worldwide obsession with not being married is not a good thing, because families make everything strong. Nations, church, everything. There is a desire for recreation and purpose, probably more than we've ever seen it in an American context. It's nothing wrong in and of itself of recreating, but it's not a full-time thing. Affluence has made us lazy. Just having an abundance of things has made us lazy people. We don't work for stuff because we're so rich in America. That's a good and a bad thing. It's good that we've done that. Previous generations have paved the way for us to have affluence, but it's also made us really lazy. And then, of course, our government tends to reward laziness. All of that sort of a cocktail for like just a blended up compendium of stuff that's led to the result of people not working. Okay? And our goal is not to get stuck on number one, but I think you can see there's going to be a lot of discussion on number one. So that leads us to number two. How does Solomon describe the place of labor? And I mean here working and employment. How does he describe the place of labor in Proverbs? In other words, is work the most important thing in life? Look at Proverbs 11. Proverbs 11. Chapter 11, and go with me to verse 4. Proverbs 11, look at verse 4. All right, 11 verse 4. Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. Riches don't profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness in verse 4 delivers from death. What's he mean by that? Well, he means that physical riches can't profit us spiritually, right? They don't have any bearing on us spiritually, other than the way that we handle our riches. If we could gain all the money in the world, we'd had all the wealth in the world, you still could not redeem yourself in the end, not even now. You couldn't pay that to God and have God honor that as payment of that. It just doesn't affect you spiritually, again, except in the way that you would be a steward of it and manage it. So what is important? Well, in this verse, righteousness. So he's telling us that, work has a place. We'll see that in just a moment. Work is good. Employment is good. But it's not the most important thing. Righteousness is the most important thing. In the same chapter, Proverbs 11, look at verse 28. Verse 28. He who trusts in his riches will fail. Another warning about the fickleness of riches. But the righteous will flourish like foliage. So there's a truth here that some do trust in riches rather than God. It happens all the time. Some work themselves to death trying to gain more money. I got to have this amount of money. I need this amount of money. Nothing wrong with preparation, right? That's a different thing altogether, right? And then the Lord superintending your plans and your future. But the contrast here is that in contrast to a person who's just desirous of stuff, the righteous are like a flourishing tree. The righteous are like a flourishing tree. Proverbs 16, verse 8. Proverbs 16, verse 8. Better is a little with righteousness than vast revenues without justice. And that's a powerful verse for a lot of different reasons. But here he's telling us in the context of employment that there are some jobs, right? There's an admission here by inference that there are some jobs in this world that are very lucrative because of their connection to evil, right? You want to make a lot of money? Open a casino. Those things make a ton of money because they're designed to keep your money. So you go in and you just blow your money and they keep your money, and they might pay out every now and then, right? Just to keep people interested, to keep that addiction going for some people, but you're going to make a lot of money. But is that a good thing to be involved in? Or to open a bar, you're going to make a lot of money making people drunk. But he's saying here, it is better to make less money and have a little and be righteous than to be involved in something where you make a lot of money and not be righteous. So what's he telling us? What's the most important thing? Not employment. It's not the most important thing on the list of things that should be important, right? It is important. We'll see it in just a moment, as I said. But righteousness is the most important thing. Then Proverbs 27. Proverbs 27. Proverbs 27, verse 1. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. And you'll see the same sentiment echoed in a lot of places. You'll see it in Matthew 6. Jesus will use that same concept in Matthew 6 about not being anxious about tomorrow, but sufficient for today is the evil thereof. You'll see it again in James 4, right, about the fickleness, the fleeting nature of life. What's his point here? Psalm 27, verse 1. It's that physical things are corruptible and time is fleeting, and don't waste life going after things that aren't enduring. There are priorities in life, and stuff is not a priority. In James 4, verses 13 to 17, he reminds us that life is a vapor. It's a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. How about Proverbs 23? Proverbs 23. Look at verses 4 and 5 of Proverbs 23. Proverbs 23, 4 and 5. Do not overwork to be rich. Don't overwork to be rich. Because of your own understanding, cease. Stop it. Then he says, will you set your eyes on that which is not? That's in the context of what he just said. Verse 5, will you set your eyes on that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away. They fly away like an eagle toward heaven. All right, so he's telling us, don't overwork to be rich. What does all that mean? Well, wealth is unpredictable. It's unstable, right? It can, if it's around and you're able to use it in a righteous way, it can help you do some things, but it's often attended by great hardship and stress. Don't kill yourself over money and a job. Don't do that, because it's like obtaining a fleeting commodity. You can have it, and it can be gone the next day. So all of that is a way of saying money's not the most important thing. And a job, while it may be important, is not the most important thing. So is it still a good thing, though? Is work still a good thing? Yes, work is still a good thing. Look at Proverbs 16. Proverbs 16, and take a look with me at verse 3. Commit your works to the Lord, and your thoughts will be established. What's he saying here? In the context that we could use it in the context, general context of employment and work. Work is a good thing. And we can accomplish much when God is allowed to be a part of it, when he's involved in it. I'll give you a great example of this. Probably, it's one of the best examples in the Bible, I think. Not that others are, it's so memorable, and I think we can relate to it. Genesis 39. Joseph has been sold by his brothers into slavery. He's taken down to Egypt. He's sold into the service of Potiphar, and he is an employee in Potiphar's house. God is with him because he's faithful. And he's so faithful. He never wavers in his faithfulness. He's resisting evil. He's just working hard. It's not where he wants to be. I'm sure that's not where he imagined his life would be in that moment. But he's rewarded. In fact, he ends up number 2 under Potiphar, but he's basically number 1 in Potiphar's household. He's over Potiphar's house. Why? Because he allowed God to be part of that. So you can accomplish great things when God is allowed to be a part of that. That's saying work is a good thing. God's glory can be shown through you in employment if you'll just put your hand to the plow and do a good job. In Proverbs 10, verse 22, you get another glimpse of how good labor is when he says in verse 22 of Proverbs chapter 10, the blessing of the Lord makes one rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. All right, so there's a blessing in enjoying the work of your hands. It's very satisfying. There's deep gratitude that comes from having worked and earned something in life. There's appreciation for that. It leads to a healthy mind. There are really many positive benefits that come from applying yourself and working really hard at something. That sense of accomplishment, that's a really healthy thing to have. The initiative that it takes to get there, that's a really healthy thing to exercise. And Proverbs 10:22 calls work a blessing, and we should consider it that. All right, so number 3. All right, number 3. And we're moving right along in our notes. I'll have to take a look at our time. All right, we've got enough to go through these. Number 3, what advice does Solomon give in order to be a good employee? And then under number 4, we'll do the same thing just from the standpoint of an employer, just to look ahead. All right, so what about the employee? Then number 4, we'll take a look at employer. What about employee, number 3? Well, there's some advice in order to be a good employee. Chapter 22, Proverbs 22. Proverbs 22, look at verse 29. Verse 29. Do you see a man who excels in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before unknown men. To excel in your work means to be diligent as a worker. This means you're ambitious. You are industrious. You are aggressive. And I don't mean in an unkind way. I mean, you're a real go-getter. These are people who apply themselves. That's what we've been called to do. In Ecclesiastes 9:10, whatever your hand finds to do it with your might. Do a good job at it. Excel in your work. And if you do that, you'll be rewarded. So what's he telling us? To be a good employee, apply yourself, right? It's going to be noticed. Your employer will notice you as a good worker if you apply yourself. Be ambitious, be industrious, be aggressive, not unkind. I didn't say unkind, but be aggressive, right? Just be a real go-getter, and your boss will appreciate that. And then one day when you're a boss, you can do the same for the employee that you saw with those same qualities when you have those qualities. Proverbs 12, verse 24. Proverbs 12, verse 24. Verse 24, the hand of the diligent will rule, but the lazy man will be put to forced labor. Diligent workers get promoted. That's what he's telling us here, right? When he says in this passage in verse 24 that the hand of the diligent will rule. They move up and they get to do great things. This is like in Matthew 25. Remember the parable of the talents? The man that was given 5 talents, he went out, he worked, and he applied those monies and earned 5 more. And in the end, he was rewarded with even more than that because he was diligent in his work. Be diligent if you're a worker. Be diligent as an employee. To do otherwise is theft, right? Because you're stealing time and effort and energy from your employer if you do otherwise. Proverbs 14. Proverbs 14, verse 23. All right, verse 23. In all labor there is profit. Verse 23. But idle chatter leads only to poverty. There's a difference between a talker and a doer, a worker. There's a difference between that. There are a lot of people who like to talk about what they could do. And then there are some who show what they can do through their work. Be that guy, be that woman, be that person. Impress people with a good work ethic. If you're an employee, that's what you should be doing. It may not be your forever job. It may not be the one that you really want to do. But if you're doing it, you do the best job that you can do at that. And you impress people not with your talk about what you could do. Impress them with what you are doing. Proverbs 10, verse 26. Proverbs 10, verse 26. As vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes. Ooh, that's so irritating, isn't it? That's his point. The word pictures, we understand his word picture. So is the lazy man to those who send him. Teeth don't like vinegar, right? It's just makes you cringe. And I mean, the flavor of it may be good, but there's the teeth, you want to grit your teeth when it just hits your teeth the wrong way, and you're sitting by a fire and the smoke gets in your eyes and it just burns. It's so irritating. Lazy people are irritating too. If you're an employee, don't be a lazy person. I'm not saying you can't have breaks. You're owed that if you're a worker. And that you can't have vacations. You're owed that as a worker. But don't be a lazy person, right? Do your job. Just get in there and do it. Roll your sleeves back and just do a good job. And then Proverbs 18 verse 9. He who is slothful in his work is a brother to him who is a great destroyer. And here's the lazy man again. But he's telling us a slacker doesn't produce anything. In fact, in a corporate context, in a business context, a slacker is a person who brings ruin to his business. Any business, right? You have nothing to show of your time and your effort. You just don't do anything. You're too lazy. That's a form of theft. It's a form of theft. We are robbing our employer of money and time and effort and energy when they've invested in us. Don't do that. There are many a company today that suffer from slackers and lazy people. Don't be that. So he's giving us advice. If you're an employee, right? If you're the worker, then do these things. Be ambitious, be industrious, work hard, do a good job at it. Don't be lazy. Don't be a slacker, and you'll do great things. Your boss will approve of you. You'll be promoted. You'll see great things happen in your company. That's what God wants you to do. Now, in the fourth place, what advice does Solomon give to be a good employer? The boss. What advice does he give? Well, look at Proverbs 15. Look at verse 22. Proverbs 15, verse 22. Without counsel, plans go awry, but in the multitude of counselors, they are established. That's pretty generic. It's not given in the context of employment or employee-employer relationships, but we can use it that way. It's because it's just advice across the board. A good boss is willing to learn and listen. He listens to advice. He admits, or she does, I don't have all the answers. And they're open. That man or woman is open to finding the answers that do work, even if they don't come from him or her. So they're not prideful, right? A good boss is not a prideful person. The good boss is not an arrogant person. They're not self-centered jerks because they're open to learning, even as the boss. That's what makes them a good boss. And that's just a practical principle of wisdom, to be able to listen and learn, even if it comes from the employee, and the employee says, I thought about this. What if we do, the boss, if he's a good boss, can be willing to say, that's a great idea. Let's run with that. We'll put some things together, but that's a great idea. And then give credit to whom credit is due. Proverbs 27. Proverbs 27, Proverbs 27, verse 23. Be diligent to know the state of your flocks. That's an important part. Attend to your herds. For riches are not forever, nor does a crown endure to all generations. When the hay is removed and the tender grass shows itself and the herbs of the mountains are gathered in, the lambs will provide your clothing, the goats the price of a field. You'll have enough goat's milk for your food. And then he says, for the food for your household or of your household, and the nourishment of your maidservants. The first part sets us up for the rest of it when he says, be diligent to know the state of your flocks. What's he telling us? Know your business. If you're a good employer, if you're a good boss, a business owner, if you're in any of those positions of leadership, know the state of your business. Don't make assumptions. Stay on top of the job. That's what he's telling us to do. Some bosses are always away. They're distant. Even when they're there, they're distant. They don't really know what's going on. That's a business that's going to fail one of these days. Whatever the business, you must attend to the business. That's what he's telling us here. To be a good employer, that's what you must do. Go to chapter 21, Proverbs 21, and look at verse 5. Proverbs 21, look at verse 5. The plans of the diligent lead surely to plenty, but those of everyone who is hasty surely to poverty. What's he telling us? Be diligent, be hardworking, be patient, be honest, plan for the future. You've got to have a plan for your business in order to grow it, to sustain it, and do things right. Don't just rush into stuff and do it hastily. Do it right. I'm going to go quick now because we're almost out of time. Proverbs 28. Proverbs 28. Go with me to verse 16. It says in verse 16 of Proverbs chapter 28, a ruler who lacks understanding is a great oppressor, but he who hates covetousness will prolong his days. Don't be a greedy oppressor, right? Know your business, know the business, and have a willingness to learn new things. Branch out, learn new things. What's going on in business? What can you do new? Are there new technologies that you can employ? Is there a new way, a model of business that might work? In the very next chapter, Proverbs 29, verse 7, he says, the righteous considers the cause of the poor, but the wicked does not understand such knowledge. To be a good employer, what should you do? You should be a benevolent employer. You should be empathetic to the struggles of your employees, the workers. Be concerned for the rights of your employees. Then in same chapter, drop down to verse 21, he who pampers his servant from childhood will have him as a son in the end. So don't pamper so as to remove work ethic, but treat your employees well. In turn, they're going to do really well and excel at their job if they're treated well. Take care of your workers is what he's telling them. Finally, one more. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 26. Proverbs 16, verse 26. He says, the person who labors for himself, for his hungry mouth drives him on. In principle, what does that mean for an employer? Well, your worker has needs, right? He's trying to provide for his own just as you are trying to provide for your own. And a good employer helps the employee understand his place or value to the business. And if you can do that, you'll have great workers. They'll be committed and loyal and dedicated. But that's all advice that starts not in a book for sale at Barnes & Noble, unless it's the Bible. It starts in the Bible, inspired word of God. Solomon is telling us what it takes to be a good employer and a good employee. And then you can take those principles and pretty much do anything with them. You can make application to all the aspects of a business and see how a relationship should work between the two. All right, great lesson. I hope you enjoyed lesson number 11. There are 10 other lessons that come before this. I encourage you, if you've never seen them, go back and study with us. The Wisdom of Life, a topical study of Proverbs. We'll be back, same time, same bat channel, same bat time, and we'll be in lesson number 12 next time. So stay tuned and watch for that lesson. Until then, please know I love you. God loves you even more than I do. So God bless you in your studies, and thank you very much for tuning in. See you next time. Bye.